All right, welcome back to Guitarmony 101, Part 2. So Guitarmony 102. I'm Slim Gambill, here for Vox. Thank you for joining me again. In Part 1, we talked about a couple of general scale shapes that we can use. Those scale shapes are movable to whatever key you're in. Those single octave shapes are really handy because, again, wherever you are, if you can find the root, you can find the scale that goes with the key. This time we're going to talk about intervals and arpeggios. Now, what is an interval? An interval is simply the distance between two notes, the space from one note to another note within a key or within a scale. How do we use this for harmonies? What we can do is we find our melody note and then we can count to a specific interval within the scale from our melody note. Okay, so let me give you an example of how that works. Say in our E major scale, okay, if our melody note is the root, we can say we want to do a third up, which is a pretty common harmony. We just count 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that means that from our first note to this note, that is our harmony note, and it's a third away. If this is our melody note, we do the same thing. If we want to go up a third, 1, 2, 3, just walking up within the scale. If this is our melody note and we want to do a sixth up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, if that's our melody note, say we want to be a fifth below, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's how we count to a specific interval. If you get to a chord change where if you're doing those intervals on top of your melody, that if you're maintaining, say, a third above your melody and a note doesn't quite make sense over the chord change you get to, you might have to adjust. Easiest thing is you just grab another note and see if it works, but from a fundamental point of view, you could also use what's called an arpeggio. Again, if you know what an arpeggio is, cool. For the rest of us, an arpeggio is just a chord broken up into individual notes. So say a major chord, we would use the root, the third, and the fifth within a major scale to establish the three notes that comprise that chord. Okay? So again, in E major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we take 1, 3, and 5, that is our E major arpeggio. Another way to do it. And if we add the octave in, y'all are familiar with that sound. How do we use this? When we're doing harmonies, if a note doesn't work over a chord, we can step back, say, okay, what chord is this note landing on? And then we can find out what are the notes in that chord's arpeggio. So when we come to an E major chord, we find those three notes, and chances are one of those notes will work because it's within the chord. So you can adjust your harmony to that if need be. But in general, we find an interval and we kind of go with that and we modify accordingly. At the end of the day, you always use your ear. If something sounds off, find another note. Simple as that. But this is just kind of a basis for how we're going to construct harmonies. Starting in Part 3. Part 3, we're going to actually make some music, get into some major harmonies, and then Part 4, we're going to get into some minor harmonies. So I hope you'll stick around. I hope you'll come back. I'm Slim Gambill for Vox. I will see you in Part 3.